morning. My name is Richard Miller, and you reached Never Not Here, and welcome. And we're such linguistic beings, at least I am. I don't know about you. And so I like talking and somehow contemplating on ideas. And I guess I want to say this to our guest, so I might as well just introduce him. So please help me welcome Rupert Spira from England. Hi, Rupert.
Thank you, Richard. Hi. Hi.
Sometimes we have a very heartfelt connection, even on the internet. And I don't know, I'm not always a quiet man. You know, sometimes I like excitement and enthusiasm and so on. And that kind of gets me going off in my own direction. But somehow, even from the very get-go, I just kind of feel that this is a very felt connection that we're about to have.
Yes, I feel likewise.
Sometimes I try to say something very general in the beginning, and what distinguishes us as human beings. And I suppose it's our capacity to work with images, that we can work with images and meanings and somehow work together with those two in a way that we can weave a broad spectrum of science, technology, culture, and we must be unique in that. I don't think we know anyone else on this planet that can really do what we can with our, I guess we'd have to call it abstract images.
Yes, as far as we know.
So in one way, that's a great flexibility, because our attention can range far and wide from the ground we're standing on and the chair we're sitting on. And that's a lot of the richness of being for mankind, is the abstraction capability. And I guess we're abstracting right now.
Yes. The abstraction capability, it's like a two-edged sword. It has a wonderful quality to it, which enables, as you say, us to have a conversation like we're having now. But it also enables us to abstract our experience, to separate ourselves out from our experience and conceive of it in abstract terms, and then to forget that we are conceiving it in abstract terms and really believe that our abstract terms represent the reality of our experience. So this capacity to abstract works both ways.
In one way, we're conceiving that this abstraction represents our life, but in another way, we don't even think of it. Our attention's just on the abstractions, period, and we're not. Yes. That is the life. Then,
in fact, most of us don't even realize that the mind is continually abstracting experience. For instance, when we say, "I see the buildings," we think that this is a statement of absolute fact. It's just obvious. I, this body mind, see the objects or the world out there. And we think this statement is just a statement which describes our basic reality, our basic experience. We don't realize that both the I that sees and the world that is seen are both abstractions that are superimposed on the reality of our experience. Most of us don't realize this. In fact, the fundamental presumption of our culture is that there is an inside self and an outside object, other, or world. And these two, the subject and the object, join together by an act of knowing, feeling, or perceiving, are considered to be the two essential ingredients of our experience. I and you, this and that, now and then, me and the world. These are all abstractions. Nobody has ever experienced an inside self or an outside world. And yet, if we were to say that to most people, they would say, don't be silly. I'm always experiencing myself, and I'm always experiencing a world. So yes, this abstraction, we've forgotten that the inside self and the outside world are abstractions, and we think that they are really experienced.
Right. In a way, we've forgotten it, but in another way, we've never really crossed our mind, right? I mean, did we really know that at any one time that we actually forgot it? Or let's say we're in a state now that we forgot when we knew it. So for all we're concerned, this has been our ground of being, is working with our mental apparatus.
It's true except that there are many, many moments in our life, in fact, many moments during the day, when this abstraction is cut through, when this abstraction dissolves, and the reality of our experience is, as it were, tasted. Any moment of peace, happiness, or love is just such a moment when this abstraction is cut through. Every time we experience love, love is the experience of the collapse of the inside self and the outside other.
And that just happens. It's not even intentional, right?
That just happens. It's a very familiar experience.
In fact, even if it's intentional, that's just another abstraction, which just makes it really not happen.
Yes. It happens spontaneously. It's not. The mind can't control it or
orchestrate it.
And it doesn't even know where to find it. If we were to ask the mind to find the experience of love or peace or happiness, it wouldn't even know where to look, precisely because in that experience, the mind is not present. The experience of peace or happiness is the collapse of the mind.
So in other words, the mind would have a lot of ideas about peace and love. And they don't work 100%, though. That's the thing, see? And so they're thinking, the mind is making these, our abstraction capability is making these connections or these bridges and saying, find a beautiful girl and love is going to be around there somewhere or something. There'll be a certain amount of bridges made, but I mean, they don't work 100% of the time, which means like, it's just a theory, right? Basically.
Yes. When the mind reappears out of the experience of love, during which it is not present, it immediately recreates the separate inside self, the lover, and the separate other, the outside other, the loved or the beloved. So it immediately recreates these two entities and says, I love you. Right there, love disappears, or rather, love is veiled.
That's shocking.
So the mind, and as a result of the disappearance of this love, this inside self that we imagine ourselves to be, then goes out into the outside world, searching for love in relationships, or searching for happiness in objects, or searching for peace in situations. So this veiling of love or peace that is brought about by the appearance of the dualizing mind initiates a search, an endless search in the world for this apparently lost love. Of course, we never find it.
Yeah. So the mind then is a dancer. It's got an endless dance, and the dance is that search.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
always in motion, right?
Yeah, there's no such thing as a mind that is not in motion. A mind that is not in motion is a non-existent mind. What happens when a thought comes to an end? The mind disappears. So yes, mind is movement. Mind is as you say, a dance. And most of its activity is engaged in having created the inside self and the outside world, the imaginary inside self, and its corresponding outside world, it then spends most of its life as this apparent self, searching for love, peace, or happiness in the world. That's what most minds spend their time doing.
When we say this imaginary self and this imaginary object out there, a lot of people,
Yes.
Of course, are not really relating to that.
Okay.
I mean, they're thinking, okay, yeah, I've heard that before, and I want to get it. I really want to get that.
Okay.
And one thing. Let me just make another distinction and see if that's another angle. Maybe it's not, or maybe it is. But one thing in the game of abstractions is that there's a great tendency to collect them. So we collect them in memories, we collect them in histories, and we collect them in libraries even. And it seems like the winner is the guy that's got the biggest collection. And, that's universities are dedicated to great bodies of knowledge. And I guess all this knowledge, whether it's cultural or scientific or historical, religious, spiritual, but, the way it is in a university spiritual, is all a storehouse of abstractions. And
yes, most of this storehouse of knowledge is based upon this fundamental presumption that experience is divided into two essential parts: an inside self and an outside world. This is the fundamental presumption of our culture upon which all this relative knowledge is based. Nothing wrong. I'm not suggesting there's anything wrong with the relative knowledge. It has a relative purpose, relative value. But it's all based on the presumption, and we've forgotten, of course, that it is a presumption and consider it to be absolutely true, that experience consists of these two elements. So that is why when we go to the root of the matter, all these stories, all this knowledge, when we go deeply into it, we come to this fundamental presumption that the painter Paul Cézanne said, "A time is coming when a single carrot, freshly observed, will trigger a revolution." So what was he saying? He was saying, and this was said a long time ago, I'm suggesting
right.
This time has now come, that you take anything, I mean, a cup of tea, a building, a carrot, anything at all, just the current visual perception. You take anything at all, and when it is freshly observed, seen clearly, honestly, simply, in the moment, not seen through the ideas of the past, in fact, not interpreted by the mind, but seen clearly, it will trigger a revolution. And the revolution that he's talking about is that if we go deeply into any experience, we don't find these two elements. There are not two things. Dvaita, not two things in our experience, not an inside self and an outside world. And it doesn't matter which we start with. Cézanne was a painter, so he started with the outside world. He started with a carrot or an apple or a mountain, whatever it was. We can just as well start with the inside self. It doesn't matter, but whichever side of this equation we start with, it leads to the same. If we go far enough, if we are courageous enough to go far enough in our desire to find the reality of our experience, we arrive at the same experiential understanding that there are not two things in our experience. There is no inside self and no outside other or world. And that is simply the experience of love or peace.
Listened to from afar, that's like a promise.
It's
for somebody that's really totally focused on abstractions or on descriptions or interpretations, and it sounds like a dreamland, but it sounds
yes,
it's
of
so
course.
Close, but it sounds so far away.
It sounds like a dreamland, but only because the world we have constructed, this dualistic world that we have imagined, which is truly dreamlike, but we have forgotten that it is dreamlike. So this world of the inside self and the outside world seems to us to be so substantial, so real, so obvious, that what is being suggested here sounds like fantasy land, sounds like a promise, sounds like a dream. It's the other way around. What I'm speaking of is just the simple, ordinary, our experience freshly seen. And it's available right now, just waiting to be recognized. But once we have believed that our experience really does consist of an inside self and an outside world, then the world appears in conformity with that belief. It seems to confirm our belief. And as a result, what I'm suggesting seems to be fantasy land. But what's strange is that when it becomes clear to us that there is no separate independent self inside, and there is no separate independent world or other on the outside, what is strange is that the very same world that once seemed to validate and confirm our belief in duality now confirms our new understanding. That's the magic of the world.
Right. I call that a testimony, because it seems like it's far away from a lot of people. So then we just take it.
Of course, it seems like that. It seems like that. But if we go deeply into our experience, we realize that actually it's not like that. Of course, it seems like that. It seems that there is an inside self and an outside world, but it's just because we haven't looked closely enough. For instance, when you're watching television, it seems as if you're looking at a three-dimensional landscape. That's how it appears to be. Daffodils in the foreground, mountains in the background. That's how it appears. However, if we make a thorough investigation, if we explore our experience, in other words, if we go up to the screen and explore the daffodils in the foreground and the mountains in the background, we don't find a foreground and a background. We don't find objects called daffodils, fields, trees, mountains, sky, and sun. We just find the screen. What we realized that to begin with, we thought the daffodils and the trees and the mountain were real, and the screen seemed to be invisible. The opposite is the case. Only the screen is truly visible all the time. It's all we were ever experiencing. But having forgotten the presence of the screen, we thought we were experiencing daffodils and mountains. It's the same here. It seems that we're not experiencing the screen. It seems that we're experiencing objects. But even when it seems that way, we are never experiencing objects. We are never an inside self experiencing an outside world. Even when it seems to be like that. And all it is required, as Cézanne said, is fresh seeing, clear seeing, not through memory, not through ideas, not through images, fresh, clear perception, pure seeing.
Well, that can't really be given to anyone. So then we can say that, and then
it can't be given,
it'll happen, or maybe it won't.
No, it can be. We can be helped to see clearly. We can explore our experience in just the same way that if we think we're looking at a daffodil or a mountain, we can explore our experience. We can go up to the television screen and actually find out for ourselves, not through books, not through somebody else's knowledge, but through our actual experience. We can go up to the screen and see what is real in our experience. That anybody can do that at any time. We can do it now.
So basically, we're reminding each other. That's the point of it. Is we're reminding people, hey, you can go up to the screen. You can go up to this moment and investigate.
Yes.
You can go up to
it. That's true. Now, what it is that reminds us varies hugely. It may be a conversation, but it could be. It could come totally unsolicited, just out of the blue. It could dawn on you, or a particular object, a piece of music. Something you read somewhere. I mean, there are many, many ways in which this experiential understanding can be shared, can be explored. The way we're doing it is just one of the possible ways, through words, through talking. That is what, for instance, art is. It's a communication. It's a revelation of reality. That's what Cézanne was doing. He was trying to, in his own words, he was trying to reveal nature's eternity, to reveal that which is ever present and real in the experience of nature. So art is just one of the ways that this understanding is expressed and shared. But there are many ways.
When I was making the introduction and talking about our abstracting capabilities, and I used that as just to say we're linguistic beings, abstract basically means language to me, because it's more than an image. I think animals have images, because if they didn't, they'd run into the trees in the forest. They wouldn't be able to miss them. But somehow they don't really put the meaning to the image, and so then that image is not so abstract. It's kind of just hooked onto the tree. And what I was actually doing was kind of trying to make a setup and to make a point, and which I'll do now.
Okay. Sorry, did I
No. It's just perfect. It's a perfect progression here. And the setup is this, that I was saying that the game is to collect these abstractions and make memories, make histories, create libraries, build universities, and great bodies of knowledge and philosophy. And the guy that gets the most it seems to be the winner, or the mind that has the most capacity to hold more of these relationships together seems to be honored in our society. And then I wanted to say something about another facet of being alive, and that's just the aliveness part, or being alive is really has never happened except right here and right now. That's the only way we can ever touch it. And a lot of people say the river, it's like the river of life, and we're in it in one place, and then part of the river's coming to us and part of it's flowing away. I would even put us right on the edge of a waterfall, and saying every second, our life is falling over the waterfall, and some more water, of course, is coming, which is the miracle of our life. And in contrast to the abstractions that we like to collect, we would love to collect our life. We would love to collect that water of our life. But yet it goes over the waterfall. We can look down at it and say, there it goes, and talk about how great that water was. Or we can look upstream and say, it's probably coming like this, or maybe it's coming like that, or I could shift over and be over here when this good part comes. But there's really no mechanism to grab that or collect that or build any kind of edifice or any kind of library. We're just live now, and that's it. And so then it's really, really, really different. It's a whole different ball game. And in one sense, you could say every attempt to collect life and have more of it is actually a distraction. It could be an abstraction too, but it's a distraction, and it just takes us away from the fact that our feet are in the water, and we're looking over the waterfall, or we're getting our telescope looking upstream, trying to predict what's coming. And every bit of that is actually taking our attention away from the fact that our feet are wet, and that is our life. That's all there is. And now I'm 29, 39, 49, 50, and have I paid any attention to that water? Or am I always looking down and seeing how it's hitting down there?
Yes.
What's exactly happening? And have I just given those wet feet up and as a lost cause, or not good enough, or just little old me, or somehow it wasn't adequate that I was actually standing in life, and the only part that life served was to be like a foundation where I could think about how it could have been different, or it would be different, or it will be different, or it was better, or but really, is that the only thing I'm using those wet feet for, this life, or Actually, is it somehow useful in itself?
Yes, so we could ask, why is it that we spend most of the time looking upstream and downstream? As you say, why don't we just stand with our feet in the water? Why isn't that enough? What propels us either upstream or downstream, out of the now? It's because the water in which we have our feet standing is deemed insufficient. Something is missing. So, but if we go, and it's because of this something missing that we look either upstream into the past or downstream into the future. But if we ask, why does something seem to be missing? What is the origin of that feeling? We always find the same essential belief at the origin of that feeling, and that is to believe that we are an object, to believe that we are a separate self. Instead of the one that is, as it were, standing, watching this flow of water, we've mistaken ourselves for an object, an idea, a sensation, an image, a perception. And with that belief, that the peace and the happiness, which is ever present in our hearts, is veiled. And it's as a result of that veiling of happiness that we think this current experience is not enough. And where do we go? If this current experience is not enough, where can we go? Either into the past or into the future. That's why we look upstream and downstream, because this is not enough. And the reason it's not enough is because the happiness that lies at the heart of all experience, irrespective of the conditions of that experience, has been veiled. And it is veiled by the belief in separation.
What seems to me is what we're doing, like you say, we treat ourselves as a separate self and an interior self, and that there is a world out there. In other words, we've made an abstraction out of ourselves.
Yes.
And if we're an abstraction in some sense, and if we're separate in some sense, then we're just one more thing in the library. And the library is huge. I mean, the Library of Congress and the Library of, I mean, maybe it's a genetic library where, you know, they're saying even in one man's brain, there's trillions and trillions of connections. And how many in all 6 billion people's brains? And maybe there's, you know, whatever it is, all the connections in the cosmos. We're just one out of all those connections, because that's the abstract part. We're making an abstraction out of ourselves, and we're very, very small. And then that's where the feeling of inadequacy comes from.
And if we're not that abstraction, if we're not that object that thinking has imagined, what are we?
Well, then I can think we're kind of everything, because what else is there, you know? We're kind of everything just with our wet feet, you know, there we are. And and you know, we don't have to say everything that we will encompass and know all those libraries of stuff and get it somehow into our head. They don't really matter that much. I mean, they're just arbitrary. I mean, and they're so wide, they really don't touch the water where we're standing. They're touching all kinds of imaginary water and all potential water, and maybe all kinds of sadness or past tragedies that went over the waterfall. They're touching so many things that really don't have anything to do with our wet feet and how we live our life and who we're living with, and you know, how our food is prepared, and those abstractions in a way are totally useless to living this life.
Well, I don't know that they're totally useless. I mean, they enable us to set up a conversation like this. They have a lot of very practical purposes.
Right. I didn't mean totally, but I mean, you can go so wide and so far.
They're useless in terms of seeking the one thing that everybody truly wants. If you take any one of the 6 billion of us and ask, what is it that you truly want in life? Everyone will answer in one way or another, love, peace, or happiness. So in our search for love, peace, and happiness, those abstractions are useless. In fact, it is those abstractions that veil the ever-present peace of our true nature. So in that sense, they are useless. But of course, they have practical purposes.
Well, many of the practicalities are kind of like also made up. We have practicalities of how to incarcerate somebody. And we know that really good, I mean, but do we need to do that? We know about defense. We know so many things that are really not a huge addition to our life. We know about aggressiveness and things like that. Sure. And methods of doing it. And so then these are so far away from the three things you said, love, peace, and happiness. They're not really adding to any of that.
Sure.
I mean, we might believe there's somehow calming our fears by having a great defense somehow will give us the love, peace, and happiness, but it seems like the long way around.
Yes, I obviously wasn't suggesting that.
So, what can we say about love, peace, and happiness? Are they fundamental, or are they only Are they metaphors?
Well, they're just names, of course, as names that they're just words or sounds, but they refer to something that is real in our experience. When we
that's really a good point.
Yes, that is the difference. The word peace is a word just like table or chair is a word. However, the words table or chair refer to something which, when we go towards that thing, we never actually find it. We never actually find the chair as it is normally conceived. So these are words that don't refer to our direct experience. However, the words love, peace, and happiness, they're all synonymous in the way I use them. They refer to something that is real in our experience, that which really is experienced. To go back to the metaphor, they refer to the screen. The daffodils and the fields and the mountains are not really experienced. In fact, the word daffodil refers to something that is not present as a daffodil. When we go to touch the daffodil, we don't touch it, we touch the screen. So it's the same with the word love. It refers to what is real in our experience. When the superimposed beliefs, the abstracted beliefs, the separate self in here and the separate other out there, when these abstractions dissolve, our true nature is tasted. It tastes itself. And that experience of awareness knowing itself is what is called love or peace or happiness. And that is the reality of all experience. That is what all experience is made of. And this peace is lying at the heart of all experience, simply waiting to be recognized, not through manipulating experiences, not through making the mind, the body, and the world better. It's the natural love is the natural condition of all experience, including this very experience now, is made out of love. That's what love means, the substance of experience, the reality of experience.
When you talk of love, peace, of happiness, and happiness in that way as our ground of being, as who we really are, well, then maybe it's useful to even say that they don't exist. These three elements are no things, because when everything else is gone, that's what's here.
Yes,
they're just an absence.
Well, yes, but the absence, they can be considered an absence from the point of view that believes that objects are real. If we think that objects are real, then we're going to think that the reality of our experience is an absence, is no thing, is nothing. So that's true if we believe in things. If we believe that things are real, then what the reality of experience is not a thing, it is nothing. However, that is only a concession to the belief in objects. However, when we discover that objects are not real as such, we then don't have to formulate our experience in relation to these non-existent objects. Then when we go to the reality of our experience, we don't feel it is nothing. We feel it is presence, it is everything. From its own point of view, it is not nothing, it is fullness, it is presence. It's only nothing from the point of view of a mind that believes in something.
Right. I think I get the distinction that, as an abstraction, nothing is lacking, because it doesn't have all that, all those units there,
It's nothing as opposed to something.
Right.
But when we realize there isn't something, the idea of nothing also collapses.
Right.
So to say it is nothing, I am nothing, is a halfway house. It's a valid halfway house, but it's not the full understanding. If we leave it at that, we end up with a very nihilistic philosophy. It's not that. It is presence. It is fullness. It is love. It is substantial. There is a reality to our experience. Our experience is not nothing.
Right. I was trying to say it in a way because I thought, like, if we say those things are things, then people want to go get them. But you can't go get them.
Exactly.
You can't go get them because we got to say they're no things, and then there's no sense in trying to go get peace or love or happiness.
It's no, because you're equating peace and love and happiness with things.
Yeah, if you're doing that, if you're trying to get it, you're equating it with a thing, and you'll never find it because it's not a thing.
Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that it is not present. There is something present now which is not a thing. And it is that for which all desires long for. Every time we go out in search of love, peace, and happiness, we are, in fact, searching for this no-thingness, which is our essential nature, which is not really nothing.
So how about if we say wholeness? We just say that's our essential wholeness.
Yes. No, it doesn't matter what yes, certainly. It doesn't matter what we call it as long as as soon as we call it something, anything at all, there's going to be some kind of limit implied by the word. Even to call it awareness or consciousness is already to say too much about it. This is why the ancients, in their wisdom and their humility, they didn't call this understanding oneness. They called it not two-ness, non-duality. They knew that to call it oneness was to say one thing too much about it. Because as soon as you label it as something, you imply something else which it is not. It is one rather than two. It is one rather than nothing. And it therefore qualifies it, limits it. In other words, it makes it an object. And they realized that the mind couldn't legitimately do that. And so this is why they said, they just went as far as saying, it is not two. That's the best the mind can do. It is not two things, ad vitam. They knew that the mind can't go to the heart of experience. It can't know what experience is. The mind that tries to go to the heart of experience is like the moth that is all the mind wants is the heart of experience. Every desire only desires the heart of experience. But when the mind goes to the heart of experience, it goes like a moth to the flame. It is attracted to it, but the moment it touches it, it dies. It can't experience it. It can't know it. It can only die in it. That is what the experience of love is. The death of the dualizing mind, the death of the separate self. Happiness is just another name for the same non-objective experience.
I try to think of an effective way to what we were saying before is inviting people to step up to the television and check out the screen.
Okay.
And
let's do that. Let's go to the screen. Let's.
Well, we could do that too, but I want to say a couple of things about it.
Okay, sorry.
No, we could do it. I sure would like to, but somehow, saying many of the things that we say and talking about Advaita, it's an indication, but somehow for many, many years it doesn't seem to take hold in a lot of people, myself included.
But that's exactly because we sit around, because it's much more than just talking about it. It's relatively easy to come to the intellectual understanding of what we're speaking about here. We read a few books, we go to a few meetings, but it's a different thing to go there in our experience. I'm sorry, I think I interrupted you.
No, that's good, because I flow pretty good. But I know that. I totally know that intellectually it's kind of easy to work around and around. But also, I would like to say this. Experientially, and many people, and myself included, used to have an idea that the whole point of spiritual inquiry was to have a taste. And many people, through many techniques, meditate for years and years and years, do other kind of breathings or yogas, and do many, many things. And they get many, many tastes. But yet, some underlying story, some underlying belief structure, some way of describing and letting our attention fall on the descriptions does not deconstruct the underlying story that makes this world appear the way it always has.
That's very true.
And we step out of meditation and we step out of those peaceful moments, and we're right back in what they call the real world. And the real world has got a job that I don't like, and a rent that I can't quite afford, and kids that are having their own problems, and I'm thinking that I'm supposed to manage them or help them in some way, but they're not digesting society very well. And so many things are happening, and whether we're just using these meditations or peaceful moments or tastes or investigations of the screen as an escape, and we're not honestly really letting it be part of our life, or, something about it seems like it doesn't work any better than the intellectualizing, or somehow it takes both, because somehow that story that we're using as a filter to look at the world through, and this is how it works, this is how it works, this is how you have success, this is how you have happiness, this is how you relate with people. That doesn't deconstruct so easy. And I'm wondering, it takes more than just one or the other, the intellectual part or the heart part. Something else allows this veil to lift. And it's kind of a crash of the story sometimes.
Can you say that again? It's kind of
a crash or like a collapse of our belief structures. Somehow they collapse, and doesn't really collapse them just to have a peaceful experience.
Sure.
I mean, we're inviting people to come to the screen and check out their experience. Now, one thing we could say is, like, when you're standing in that river and you got your wet feet and the water's flowing over the waterfall and something new is coming upstream, you can see that something's in the horizon. But the screen is always at your feet. The screen is not in any of those other places. That's the only place to look. Would that be a reasonable statement?
Yeah, the screen is yourself.
Yeah. So there's nothing abstract about the screen, right? And there's no abstraction. There's no abstraction that will help you understand the screen or see it better or nothing like that.
From the screen's point of view, there is no such thing as an abstraction. The screen only knows the screen. The screen doesn't know flowers and fields and mountains.
It doesn't know language.
It doesn't know objects. It just knows itself. If you were a screen that could know, if the screen could know, all it would know, this is in the metaphor now, this screen, it wouldn't know objects, it just knows itself. It's only a mind that has separated itself out in the it's only a self that thinking has separated out from experience, that looks back on experience and says it's made of objects, selves, entities, people, places, things, time. Those are all abstractions, but they're only abstractions from the point of view of an imaginary self. In other words, the outside world is only an outside world from the imaginary point of view of an inside self. The screen, pure awareness, knows no such thing. It only knows the absolute intimacy of experience, too close. All experience is too close to our self-awareness to be known as something. To know anything as a thing, we have to separate ourselves from it. I here and it there. I the subject, it the object. That's how things are known. But what is it that knows these things? It is an imaginary self. For awareness, the true knower of experience, that doesn't have this separation in it, it doesn't know things or objects. Experience is far too close, far too intimate, far too present.
It almost justifies a new word, because knowing, the knowing we're saying is like a word that we're saying cognating. And
it doesn't. We have very good words for it. It's love. That is what love is. The total we know this in common parlance. We know that when we fall in, what is the experience of falling in love? It is the complete collapse of me, the inside self, and you, the outside other. That's what we mean when we say love. These words beautifully describe. They point towards. The experience of beauty is the same experience. When you go outside and you look at a beautiful landscape, what actually happens is that you, the inside self, and it, the outside world, dissolve. We all know this dissolving experience when we're out in nature. The inside self vanishes, the outside world vanishes. That experience is the experience of beauty. It is the experience of the screen knowing itself. Of course, we misinterpret it. When the mind reappears, it says, I saw the landscape. I love you. Then we're back in imagination again. And beauty and love are veiled. And the imaginary self sets out again on its search. But these words all refer, and we all know. If we say, do you know what is meant by awareness knowing itself? Most of us will say, no, what on earth are you talking about? But if we say, do you know the experience of love? Everyone will say yes. We all know what love is. We all know what happiness is.
So is that could that be the best metaphor or the best way to really experience the screen is just to sit in our love? Like that, those moments when that feeling of love, or just allow that feeling of love, and that's the screen. And that's
Yes,
the very
yes.
best way, probably, just to
But it's not the
investigate.
best way. It's one way, not the best way. It's one way. There are many ways, but yes, it's a perfectly valid way. If by love we understand the absolute intimacy of experience, the absolute lack of otherness or separation, as long as that's what we mean by love, then yes, that would be enough. That would be a beautiful way to understand experientially what we're speaking of here. Not the only way, there are many ways, but yes. If by love, however, we mean I, an inside self, love you, a person over there, then no. That just reinforces duality and seeking.
Well, let's just say if love was some kind of a wholeness, or wholeness.
Yes.
If we focused on wholeness, we could feel.
Okay.
We would
Yeah.
feel this, you know. And
Sure.
then the wholeness, we'd say, well, what the heck is wholeness? Well, we'd say, well, there's probably not much anxiety going on, because it's just feeling good, you know. And then there's probably not many needs there, you know. So then, but yeah, but I do have needs. But well, wait a minute, you don't have needs, because if you look in your fridge, it's full. Okay, so then I can feel that there's no need, and then and maybe one way to kind of feel that is to focus on gratitude or gratefulness, or and just feeling that, and just saying, that's the screen. Is that who I am? Is that where everything, all perceptions fall on this screen? And then just whatever's here now, whatever water is at my feet is what's on the screen, I guess.
Yes, that's very true. Yes.
It just comes and goes. It falls over the waterfall, and as fast as I can let it go, the new one shows up in a stronger way. I mean, the new one is there anyhow, but I might diminish it by taking my attention away from it. But somehow, I mean, right now I'm just trying to look at a way, without getting too many conceptual notions, just at a way to sit at the screen and do this investigation that we were talking about, you know.
To recognize, simply to recognize that we are that screen. We are the presence, this aware presence. We're not a thought, we're not an image, we're not a memory, we're not a collection of sensations. Whatever it is that is both present and aware of these thoughts, of these words, of these perceptions, that one, it has no age. It wasn't born. It's not evolving. It knows no lack. It's not destined for death. That one is ourself. It's the one that is hearing and experiencing and seeing right now. And it's very easy to check that in your experience. Your thoughts flow by, sensations, feelings, perceptions, they all flow by, but you are not flowing by. You, this presence, this aware presence, are not flowing.
Yeah, if I was flowing, I wouldn't notice any of that other, because I would just be in the flux with that. Things wouldn't change around me. I'd be in nothing would be moved. That movement of this present moment, the movement of this present moment, is really kind of what life is because what the perception is because without that movement, those differences, I guess we would just be frozen in some kind of like a constant, and we wouldn't see any, our perceptions would never change, and so therefore they wouldn't even exist, because they wouldn't come on the radar. And so then that beautiful movement is life.
Yes.
So maybe you could say whenever we're diminished or feeling somehow less or inadequate or something, we're looking at a concept, because in that great library of all those concepts, one more concept is going to be minuscule.
Yes, and not only when we're just feeling diminished, but whenever we feel we are something, whenever we feel we are anything, we are taking our stand as an object, as a thought or a feeling or a collection of sensations, as some limited object. If we think that we can be diminished, then we must be considering ourselves to be an object. Only an object could be diminished. Or if we feel aggrandized, it's the same thing. It's because we consider ourselves to be an object. Aware presence can't be diminished or aggrandized. So yes, if we feel superior or inferior or agitated or any of those things, it's because we've mistaken ourselves for an image or a feeling or a thought. The screen can never be agitated. The screen is pure peace itself. Peace, which is what we are. Right now, this very present moment, which is the only present moment, this now, we are this inherently peaceful presence of awareness. It can't be agitated. It's like a space. Try now to agitate the space of the room in which you are sitting. Can you agitate it?
Stir it up, huh?
Can you stir it up?
No, I think that's a wonderful distinction. That
is yourself. That right now, yourself, it is pure, undisturbable peace. Right now and always. Not always in time, ever present now. It cannot be disturbed. Once you taste that, and it's just there to be recognized whenever we want to recognize it. Once that becomes clear, nothing can ever disturb you again. And think about it. If there is peace, there can be no resistance to the now, because you're at peace. There's no agitation. There's no I want something different from this. In other words, peace equals happiness. Happiness is the absence of the sense of lack. Peace and happiness always come together. They're the same thing. As Yvonne Armand said, happiness is peace in motion. Peace is happiness at rest. And that is what we are. It's always present, ever present, under all circumstances, however apparently good or apparently bad. Just sitting there at the heart of all experience, waiting to be recognized. We don't have to escape from experience to recognize it. On the contrary, we go right into the heart of it. And that's where we find this peace, shining at the heart of all experience. This experience, all experience, however good or bad.
When you said you can't, just try, you can't really agitate this moment, it came to me that emotions, moods, feelings, all these things are part of the abstraction, and they're all upriver or downriver, and none of those are really here.
They're all based on believing that we are something other than this undisturbable presence of peace. All those things that you talk about depend upon our first believing that we are disturbable, that we are something other than this inherently peaceful presence of awareness. Once we have made that assumption, we contract, we become a separate inside self. We cease to be this eternal, ever-present, open, empty, transparent awareness. We become instead an object, a person, an entity, a self. Now, as that self, we can become unhappy, disturbed, agitated. We grow old, we're destined to die. All these things pertain to the separate self. For awareness, no such thing ever happens. It wasn't born, it doesn't have an age, it's not sitting on a chair, it didn't walk into this room. It doesn't know the meaning of the word unhappiness. It is too intimately, utterly one with all experience to be able to separate itself out and say, I don't want this, I want something else. In other words, the only experience awareness, that is our self, knows is the experience of love. That is its only way of knowing experience, love. It doesn't know anything else. It's only an abstracted entity, a separate self, that separates this seamless intimacy of experience into two things, into an inside self and an outside world. With that belief, love is veiled, peace is veiled, and we become this separate entity that we believe is destined for death, that is 30, 40, 50 years old, that is located in a room, and that is on an endless search for happiness in the outside world. All that takes place in the imagination. It's the experience of an imaginary self. For our true self of awareness, no such thing ever happens. And it lies at the heart of all experience, of every experience. It's present now, it's always present.
Sometimes we talk like this is just too awesome, this love, and that there's some kind of a spring tendencies to spring back from it or somehow stand back from it.
Yes.
And like some people say, well, it's your ego that doesn't want to die or these kind of things, but that's really, really abstract if you look at it, because, I mean, if what we're saying is true, there is no ego, and there's no ego to want, and there's no ego to die, and but what is this tendency? Is it really too awesome that we need to kind of approach it diligently or somehow approach it with caution?
It's what it is. It's only an imaginary self that feels they are separate from love. So it's true that there is no real inside self. However, if we feel that we are an inside self, that becomes our reality. And as this inside self, we have by definition separated ourselves out, or rather thinking has separated the imaginary self out from experience. Now, and as a result of this separation, love is veiled. And it is for this reason that the imaginary inside self is always on a search for love. In fact, the imaginary separate self is not an entity, it is an activity. It is the activity of seeking. It's not that I, the separate self, seeks. It's that I, the separate self, is the activity of resisting and seeking. Now, what is it seeking? It is always seeking the peace and the happiness that have been veiled by its presence. So this peace and happiness is the one thing the separate self always wants. And if you ask any 6 billion of us out there what they want, they'll always say in one way or another, peace, love, and happiness. Now, as the separate self, the apparent separate self, approaches peace, love, and happiness, like the moth approaching the flame, it can't experience it. The moth can't experience the flame. It's attracted to the flame, but it cannot experience it. It cannot even touch it, because the moment it touches it, it dies. So the one thing the separate self wants is to touch the flame of love. The one thing the separate self fears is the flame of love, because it knows that as it touches it, it dies. And this is the perennial conflict that lives at the heart of the separate self. We want love more than anything else, and we fear love more than anything else. And
I think we should make it really clear that, okay, we say the separate self dies, but of course, saying that too many times makes it sound like there is a separate self. Of course, the separate self doesn't exist, so that it doesn't really die. It just realizes it never was there. And so then that's the action of touching this love is actually releasing this separateness and just kind of relaxing, and somehow what we call vulnerability, I don't know, but vulnerability is so misunderstood because it sounds like you got to hurt. there has to be a hurt to be vulnerable, or that's tied directly into it. And I'm not so sure that there is even such a thing as a hurt, because we said there's no way to disturb this centeredness that
Yes.
we are.
Yes, the hurt feelings are always for the imaginary self, and you're right. It's an imaginary self, but so of course it
doesn't die.
It's not the real separate self that dies. It's the illusion of a separate self that disappears. Yes, of course.
And so then that, when you say it that way, it kind of makes the hurt ersatz, like it's not really a real hurt. It's just but like, as long as we're leaning on this thing and thinking, oh yeah, I like that thing, then it hurts. But as soon as we realize it wasn't there in the first place, it doesn't, how can the hurt be there in the first place, And then we just take as much as we want, Maybe we think we're foolish or something like that, because here we are all happy and everybody else is struggling away. And I don't know, is it just societal that we're just trying to fit in, and we're embarrassed?
I lost you there, Richard. Are we embarrassed?
Well, embarrassed that if we're vulnerable and feeling love and just really feeling our happiness, then it seems like all of our friends wonder, what the hell happened to you? You're weird. And so then we have to step back just to be part of the tribe, or what's going on?
It's true that there is a deep taboo in our culture on happiness. Because happiness is freedom.
Well, I mean, there's not a taboo for searching for happiness, but there's certainly a taboo for what we call
search for happiness is the opposite of happiness. If we're searching for happiness, we're obviously not happy. So yes, society is very keen to support the search for happiness.
But there's a big taboo on unconditional happiness. If there's such a thing as, unconditional happiness is the only happiness that there is, We Absolutely. Talk about unconditional love, but that sounds like we got a great mother or something like that. Or Jesus is there, unconditional lovingness. But unconditional happiness is totally centered out of here. That's my center. And if I just take all my conditions off, hey, what's left? I'm happy. And there's a great taboo for that. You're the village idiot if you're unconditionally happy.
Yes. Yes. Yes, happiness is dangerous because it's freedom.
Nobody can force you to do anything because you're already there.
Yes, it's pure freedom.
So everybody, let's just do unconditional happiness.
Sure.
So that's it. Stripping off those conditions is kind of like gradual awakening. I'm just saying things. I don't know.
Yes, we could say that the separate self is or the real self, that the screen that appears to be something other than the screen, such as a landscape, is apparently gradually deconditioned. Yeah, that would be one way of saying it. So all the conditions that have been superimposed upon it by beliefs and feelings are seen through until we get, in other words, that the separate I is divested of all the beliefs and feelings that it's made of, and it stands revealed as the true and only I of presence. Of course, it was that all along, just as it was the screen all along. So yes, it's a kind of deconditioning. But even the apparently separate I is only made out of the true I of awareness, just as the daffodils on the mountain are only made out of the true presence of the screen. There is only one I, only one self or presence, whatever we call it, that nameless one. As Ramana Maharshi beautifully said, When the I is divested of the I, only I remains. That's the whole teaching in a nutshell. Beautifully eloquent and succinct.
A couple of things we said really point right to the heart of the matter. And one is like the screen is the guy that's standing in the water. It's the water right here. So at least we know where to look and where not to look. And
absolutely.
And we're not trying to say it's only one way, to deny all that stuff, that's our culture. That's how we relate. That's how we work. All those abstractions is a game that we're playing, but don't cut short your time for standing in the water and really, and the second thing is to just drop all your conditions for happiness because you deserve it now. You don't need to do anything to deserve your happiness. And if you can just drop those conditions, unconditional happiness is already here.
Absolutely. Yes.
So I think those are two great pointings.
Yes. Yes.
We were saying that we were gonna, in a bit we were gonna go to investigating the screen, but I think we've been doing it all along. In a strong way too.
Yes. Yes.
Very clear.
Yes.
I guess I kind of call it freedom. I don't know. I love talking about freedom.
Yes. What I've noticed is that, yes, it has so many different flavors. We could call it freedom. We could call it peace. We could call it happiness. We call it beauty. I mean, it seems to have so many qualities. But yes, freedom. Yes, freedom is a word that beautifully expresses its position, if we can call it a position. It's
right.
It's nature.
If you're free, you have all those other things too. You have happiness, you have love, you have...
If you have one of them, you have all the rest. They're all synonymous. If you think about it, peace implies happiness, happiness implies... They all mean the same thing, but they're arrived at through slightly different ways. And some of us resonate more with one word than another. Some of us feel our true nature more as peace, others more as happiness, others of love. It's just... It doesn't matter what word we use in the end.
Sometimes there's a tendency to believe that this would be an alternative to my life now, and that I should live only from this center and somehow be here more and more and all the time. And of course, that's an overlay or an idea that I'm putting on top of actually what's happening. And what's happening is maybe part of my... We said even in the beginning that everyone has experienced at least a moment of love somewhere. They would know what we're saying when we're saying that. So then to have that pressure that I should be changing my my focus of my attention so that I really see the screen and see my unconditional happiness more than I am, and somehow that I should take my attention away from my my job and my relationships and my community. We're not saying that, right?
Yes, there's nothing that we're saying that is incompatible with leading a very regular life, having a family if you want a family, having a job, earning your living, going on holiday, paying the rents. What is being suggested here is not in conflict with any of that. And it's indeed possible to lead a very ordinary life without there being any sense of being a separate inside self. and still to be in a relationship, to have a family, to have a job, to earn a living.
That's an interesting testimony. I should ask about a period of adjustment and so on. But I just want to kind of hit this last nail a little bit more, because,
Sure.
Our abstract mind says, oh, I've discovered that I can be peace, that I have a center, that there's a screen that I can put my attention on, all the things that we said, that I can just rest in my unconditional happiness. Oh, and then the abstract part is going to say, oh, I can do that better. I'll even do it more.
Yes, but that's based on a misunderstanding. If we think that the screen is something we can put our attention on, then by definition, we are going to think that it's something that comes and goes, something we can do more at one time or less at another time. But the screen is not something we can put our attention on. The screen is what we are. We don't have to give it our attention. What would give it it's already itself.
So are we saying we couldn't even take our attention away from it?
Yes.
I mean, because they talk about awareness of awareness, like as if awareness could go on awareness, or like it could go on the screen somehow. I mean, what does that mean? And that's a misunderstanding that people...
That awareness...
Well, I think it's spoken that you should rest in awareness, which means having awareness on awareness or something like that. It's kind of a trick. Sure. I don't understand it. I mean, any more than anyone else, but I mean, it sounds real good.
Yes. So if somebody says, give your attention to awareness, it is said to one who believes that they are a separate entity. And it is a suggestion to that apparent entity to, instead of giving its attention to objects, that is, to thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions, it is a suggestion to give attention to that which is aware of thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions. But of course, that suggestion is making a concession to the separate self. That there is no separate self that could give its attention to awareness. Awareness is that which it's not quite right to say this, but awareness is that which is looking, is that which is giving its attention. We are already that which is seeing thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions. We don't have to give ourself attention. We could only give something that was not apparently ourself attention, such as an object, such as a thought. For instance, if I was to say to you now, turn your attention towards the door in your room, or turn your attention towards the sensation at the soles of your feet, or turn your attention towards the current thought, you would know where to turn, because all those are objects. But now if I said to you, turn your attention towards yourself, turn your attention towards whatever it is that is aware of the door, your feet, your thoughts, where would you turn your attention?
Could I just use the metaphor like we said and just feel the peace and the stillness that's right here now? And
yes.
And that would be like a metaphor for just resting in presence?
Yes, because what is it that feels that peace? What is it that is aware of that peace?
That's the awareness that we were...
Exactly. That is awareness being aware of itself. It's not being aware of a peaceful thought or a peaceful body or a peaceful world. It is being aware of peace itself. And it is the peace that is being aware of peace. In other words, it's just the simple knowing of our own being. That's what peace is. That's what happiness is, the simple knowing of our own being. It's knowing of itself. Because our self is not known by something other than ourself. It is ourself that knows itself. That's what peace is, the knowing of being, which is the same as being.
So
that would be the same, yes.
If I either could use that metaphor and rest in that.
As that. Yes.
Could be one thing. But would it be useful also to retract my attention from the door and from the soles of my feet and from my current thought? I mean, or is that even possible, or just to watch how it's happening, or?
Yes, we could.
Not get so involved in abstractions?
Yes. If we imagine that you're standing on a station and a train comes through, you standing at the station in this metaphor is you awareness. The train that's coming through is the current thought or the current feeling.
Or the current perception?
Or the current perception, the current sensation. In other words, any object of the mind, the body, or the world. It comes through. Now, the train is just a story. It's just a metaphor I'm giving you now. The train comes through. It stops. Now, you have the choice. Are you going to board the train or not?
I love it. Okay. That is really good.
Now, you just don't board the train. Now, you don't have to fight the train. You don't have to make the train change. You don't have to make it peaceful. You don't have to paint it a different color.
You don't have to wish the different train came in, that it should have been another train.
I mean, you don't care what the train just comes in at whatever speed it comes in, whatever shies, however many carriages, it doesn't matter. It stops. You just stay on the platform, and the train pulls out again, and you just don't board the train. So this is in answer to your question about not focusing on thoughts. It's not, we don't have to make an effort not to focus on thoughts. We just let them flow by. Sensations, perceptions, thoughts, feelings, everything is they're just trains. They just flow by. But the difference is that we don't board the train. And by doing that, it's very ordinary. We just think, okay, in other words, you give your mind total freedom to be whatever it's going to be. It doesn't have to be peaceful. It can do whatever it likes, but you're just not going with it. You just give the mind freedom to do its thing, to do whatever it has been conditioned to do. Likewise the body, and likewise the world. But you, presence, you just stand in your being. You give the body, the mind, and the world freedom to be whatever they are from moment to moment. And by doing so, they are giving you back your freedom to be what you are. Just this ever-present, simple, natural peace. So it's not, we don't have to struggle with any appearance. We don't have to defocus the mind or struggle with, try to make the mind peaceful or try to detach ourselves from it. Nothing like that. We're already perfectly detached from the mind. We're just standing on the platform. It's where we always are, standing on the platform.
I forgot exactly how we phrased it, but very early in the conversation we were talking about the abstraction capability, whether we called it mind or not, and we were saying that it's on the move. It moves you. That's what's always moved, and so many people these days seem to be on the move. They've got a string of appointments, and they're always having a few left over that they didn't get finished today. And so then it seems like at any time it would be wise to do one more task. And what I'm asking is, would it be wise to maybe, if it takes a restructure in our lives, some kind of a restructure, and say, okay, normally we're all involved in the things we're involved. We have to get on a lot of trains. Should we have a period where movement is not the most important thing, where we can say, let's just let the trains go by and not get on them? And does it take a restructuring of your life in order to allow that?
The restructuring of our life happens as a byproduct. It happens naturally. We don't have to. In other words, what we truly are, is never moved. We never go anywhere. Once that becomes clear, once we begin to take our stand as this unmovable presence, which is what we always are anyway. In other words, once we know ourselves as the platform rather than the train, then we cease having an agenda with appearances. We just we just let them be. And more we know ourselves as this inherently undisturbable peace. Now, that has an effect on appearances. It's not the goal. There's no goal in this. There's no goal in taking our stand as this presence. It is totally goalless. However, as a side effect, as a natural side effect, the body and the mind, and even the world in time, are reconditioned by our simply taking our stand as this presence. And this reconditioning may involve some reorganization of our life. It will have an effect on our life. It'll totally affect all of our life, our relationships, our work, everything. But it happens from the inside out. Our life, the body, the mind, and even the world begin to become realigned with this experience of peace and happiness. Now, how that happens and how long it takes for that to happen varies a lot from case to case. But yes, there is an inevitable and it's a natural, effortless realignment of not just our thoughts and our feelings, but our actual body, and not just a body, but the world as well. There is a realignment of our experience with this experiential understanding.
Of course, our health also.
And our health, yes. But we have to be careful about that, because it doesn't mean, I think it's important to say that not all disease or lack of health comes from the belief in separation. Some may do. But it doesn't necessarily mean that our bodies become eternally youthful and healthy. That would be going too far.
That would be going too far, but I mean, there's something natural that we don't know about that we call aging and so on. But still, yes. I mean, you said not all diseases or so-called unhealthy situations are caused by our belief in separation. But I mean, how do you know? I think they're all. I think it's probably pretty likely that they're all. There's not even a cause, right? But they're all somehow they're all integral with how we hold ourselves and what thought streams we send out and how we lean on anxiety as an important tool
yes,
when it really isn't.
It's true that the sense of separation permeates not just the mind, it permeates the body. The body becomes dense and contracted. And this contraction goes deeply into our cells, our muscles, the tissues. The sense of separation really takes the body over. And this is expressed in our movements, in our gestures, in our postures, in our activities. So when the sense of separation, either in rare cases instantaneously or in most cases gradually, is flushed out of the system, this contraction deep inside the body is gradually relaxed, and the body returns more and more to its natural, organic, open, transparent state. So it's true, these tensions and contractions in the body are relaxed. But again, I think it would be going too far to say that all illness is caused by the sense of separation. Because the presumption in that statement is that illness is wrong. Illness is ignorant. It's not. Ramana Maharshi died of cancer. Krishnamurti died of cancer. It's all bodies die. Bodies tend not to die healthy.
That's a real beautiful insight. I didn't know what you were going to say, but when you said that to say that all illness was caused by contractions and separation is kind of a denial of illness as part of our life.
Yes, in fact, illness for many of us may cooperate with the dissolution of the sense of separation. It's not working against it. For many of us, illness works with the dissolution of the sense of separation. It cooperates with us. It doesn't work against us. In other words, it's not a failure. Doesn't come from ignorance. And by ignorance, I don't mean that in a negative sense. I mean, it doesn't come from the ignoring of our true nature. It may be the very thing that helps us let go of the sense of separation.
That's a very big expansion, just to see that.
Yes, yes.
We talked about so many things. It
Yes.
looks like if we start opening a few more doors, we could be here a couple more hours.
We could sit here for a few hours quite easily. Yes, 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 yes.
I don't know. Maybe the best thing is to do this is express my gratitude and say thank you, Rupert.
Well, thank you, Richard, and I share your gratitude at this. I share your gratitude.
And somehow reminding that that gratitude is who we are. You know, that is that's the doorway to our love and our peace and
yes,
in this present moment.
Yes, I mean that is the first response the body-mind makes as it returns from this dissolution, when all these knots and contractions dissolve, and when the body-mind reappears out of this dissolution, the first thing it says is thank you. Yes. And in fact, sorry, just one more thing. In fact, life becomes an expression of that gratitude. Life is simply that gratitude expressing itself in the uniquely in the case of each different body-mind. But that's one way we could describe it. When this sense of separation leaves us, life becomes a kind of song of gratitude. Yes. I'm sorry, Richard, I interrupted you.
I was just going to say Rupert Spira. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you.
And thanks everybody for watching, and we'll have to make Rupert one of our major friends. So, thanks for this day.
Thank you, Richard. Bye.